Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Dennis Brown, and this is my weekly Freight Broker Bootcamp Live that we do every Monday, except last Monday because some issue with our streaming provider. I have no idea what it was, but I'm excited that you're here. I appreciate your patience. Today, I have a special guest. I'm going to introduce him here in a minute. We're going to let some people get live, and it looks like everything's working so far, so fingers crossed. Again, today we have a special guest. Today is all about freight broker SHity Bonds, right? Questions that you need to ask, answers that you need to know, and everything you need to know about freight broker bonds. It's particularly if you're a freight broker startup, or maybe if this is one of your first renewals and you don't quite understand how to navigate the SHity bond industry. Of course, the freight broker SHity bond is a requirement if you're going to be a licensed freight broker with the FMCSA. So here's how it's going to work out today. I'm going to do some shout outs. Hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. We're going to do some shout outs, and then I'm going to introduce my guest. We're going to have a nice chat. At the end of that, we'll do live Q&A, which means I'm going to open it up to you, the audience, where you can ask questions to me or to my guest about anything to do with, freight broker bonds or the freight broker business in general. Okay. So here we go. Let's do some quick shout outs. Let's see how many people we got live. We have Cynthia, as usual. Cynthia Moore from Maryland. Welcome. Ariel from New York City. April from Texas. Corey from Billings, Montana, as always. Brian from Independence, Oregon. From Indiana. We got somebody from Indiana. We got Ivan from New York City. We got John Heller. We've got Simon from Neosho, Missouri. We got Seamus from Miami. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me again. Hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. We'll do some quick shout outs, and then we'll get this show on the road. Today, again, we have a special guest where we're going to talk about freight broker bonds, freight broker SHity bonds. All right. It's a little bit of a mystery. I get a lot of questions about freight broker bonds. So we did one of these a few years ago, and we had a lot of great participation. I hope you guys are as good of an audience as the last time. I'm sure you will be. And again, whether you're catching this live or on replay, if you're hitting me up on replay here, hit me up in the comments with hashtag replay. I'd love to hear from my replay folks. And what do we got? We got Humphrey from Dallas. We got Scott from Lubbock, Texas. We've got Eclectic Rose from Colorado. We got people from all over the place, so that's awesome. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Again, we're going to get started in just a minute once we get some people live. And then we got Anuj from Edmonton, Alberta. Cool. We got people from all over the place, as usual. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate your time. I'm humbled that you will take time out of your day to spend a few minutes with us. I don't take that lightly, and I know my guest doesn't either. So we're going to introduce him in just a minute. So hold tight, and we're going to get this show on the road. Okay. In the meantime, I'm going to dose up with some caffeine. Okay. Because I'm running on low. I recommend you do the same, and grab a pen and paper, jot down some notes. Obviously you can catch us on replay. Throughout this live, I want you to write down questions, because then at the end you can ask those questions, because we are going to do live Q&A. But hold your questions in the comment until we get to the end, until I ask for your questions, because if you don't, they're going to get lost somewhere in the feed. Okay. All right. Real Guy says he's ready to start his brokerage. Okay, sweet. All right, cool. All right, so my guest today is Dakota Ray from Jet SHity. Welcome, Dakota. Oh, shoot. I forgot to turn your mic on. That's all right. My guest today is Dakota Ray from Jet SHity. Welcome, Dakota.
Thanks for having me on, Dennis. I appreciate it.
I'm excited that you're here. It took a little bit of effort to get here because we had some mishaps last week with the streaming provider, and then we got lucky today with a few little tech glitches that we might have hopefully have figured out before we went live here. So listen, really quick, Dakota, if you could do me a favor, just quick introduction of yourself, and then we're going to dive right in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the program director for freight brokers at Jet Insurance Company, or Jet SHity. We're a direct provider for the SHity bond, so we kind of cut out the middleman and have good control of our prices and, all of that fun stuff. But I've been in the industry for coming up on 3 years now. I've been with this freight broker unit the whole time. I was actually part of its initial startup and, setting the procedures and underwriting standards and all of that fun stuff. So I've dedicated a lot of my time to this company and helping build up this program and a good understanding of the surety bond.
Yeah, and you jumped in, it seems like, where there's been a lot of changes and a lot of things going on with the FMCSA and changes inside the industry and particularly inside as it relates to the bonding industry. And maybe we'll touch on a little bit of that today. But before we jump in, okay, for the newbies in the room and for the people that are really just starting out, which we usually have a fair amount of them, tell us exactly what a freight broker surety bond is and the purpose of it.
In its most basic form, the surety bond is a financial guarantee that you as a broker are going to pay the carrier that you've hired to move the load. That's the most basic definition I can give.
Yeah, that's the perfect definition. It's funny because I get a lot of people new to the industry that think it's somehow tied to cargo insurance or tied to the load that the shipper gives you. And I tell them time and time again, it's just a guarantee of payment to the carriers that you use. That's really what it comes down to. But it is a requirement, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Can't get your broker authority without having that $75,000 limit covered in some way, whether it's by the surety bond or the trust fund. But yeah, you have to have this to be able to move those loads.
Yeah. And so let's address the elephant in the room, which is something you just, referred to, which is the $75,000 bond, right? This is what scares everybody. This is what a lot of people don't understand. Talk to us about what a $75,000 surety bond is versus $75,000 in cash, which is what a lot of people think they need in order to get started.
Yeah. So you don't have to have this huge asset base to be able to start up the business. The surety bond is going to act a lot more like an insurance policy where you pay a certain amount of premium per year or per month, and you're covered by that or for that $75,000 limit by the surety provider. So it's going to reduce that upfront payment. You're not going to have to fork over 75K, have it sit in a bank account where you can't utilize it for your company to help out the cash flow at the start of your business. You can actually pay a low amount per month to be able to get your business going a lot sooner.
Yeah. So for those of you that have taken a look at that $75,000 requirement and think that you need a $75,000 cash bank account or to put up your house, that's not necessarily the case. A lot of this is based upon other factors. And like you said, it's more of an insurance product where you're going to pay a percentage of that premium, right? You're going to pay a percentage of that 75. You're not going to pay the whole amount, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let's talk about a little bit about how much bonds cost. And I know there's a wide range there, but dive into that a little bit about what determines cost and what you're seeing in regards to cost these days, because again, costs go up and down depending upon a lot of different variables in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the cost of the bond that matters anymore. You have a lot of these surety providers now that are requiring, 15, 20, 25,000 in collateral as well, on the side of that premium. So the simplest answer, you're going to pay somewhere between $700 to $10,000 in premium for the surety bond. Some things that are going to affect that are the personal credit scores of the owners, your experience in the industry, how long your business has been active. There are some cases where personal financials or business financials will be requested as well. But the better the application, the lower the credit score, the more cash on hand you have to start the business. The longer your brokerage has been active, all of those things are going to help you get a lower rate when putting in those applications to the providers.
Gotcha. Okay. So here's the question I get a lot. because there's people that are, for whatever reason, maybe they've got some dings on their credit. Maybe they've got a past bankruptcy. Maybe they've got a foreclosure. Maybe they've got some dings on their credit, and maybe they've got a lower credit score. They're in the high 5s or 600s, and their credit isn't perfect, but they're working on it. Can someone with that type of credit qualify for a bond? And if so, what do you think they're going to see in this market, just as a range?
Absolutely, they can definitely get a surety bond. There's not really a credit minimum, at least for most of the surety providers that you apply with nowadays. You could have even a sub 500 credit score and still have a chance at qualifying for a rate. So as far as pricing goes, once you get below that 600 threshold, you're going to start looking more into the 5, 6, 7,000 range for the bond. But of course, I mean, if you've been driving truck for 5 to 10 years, or you've got some good industry experience as a freight agent, don't stress about having the low credit scores, because it's not the only factor that is going to affect the rate. You can still keep it down as long as you've got some good industry experience.
That's good to know. The industry experience does play a role, especially if you have that ding credit. So if you do have a higher premium, do some providers, including, Jet, is there the potential where it would be some sort of payment plan, or is that something that's sometimes it's required all up front, or can you guys piece it out over several months? How does that work?
Yeah. Jet's actually one of the people that offer monthly payment plans. It's not a very common thing in the industry, in surety in general, actually. Most of the plans that you're going to see are based off of 1 or even 2-year terms. There are some companies that offer quarterly payments. There are, Jet offers monthly payment. It just kind of depends on the specific surety provider that you go with. But with us specifically, even in the lower credit tier ranges, you're still going to have that monthly payment option. So you're not forking over, $7,000 to $9,000 at the very startup of your business.
Yeah, I love it. And just so you guys know, I probably should have mentioned this at the top of the interview here. The reason why I'm having Dakota on here today is because all the changes going on in the freight brokerage industry, and particularly in the surety bond industry. I reached out to Jet, started a conversation, and we now have a formal relationship where we work together in partnership. And the reason why that is because many of my students from Freight Broker Bootcamp, obviously that startup program, their next step is to move into bonding. And I wanted to provide them some better options, right? Some better pricing, some easier ways to maybe qualify, right? And so I reached out and had numerous conversations, did a lot of research. And so we've now partnered with Jet, and we're going to give you make a special offer to you at the end of this, where you guys can get some more information about this, and even file an application and have a conversation with Dakota and his team over there at Jet. Hold tight on that, because there's definitely, you want to get these questions answered beforehand, which will save you and everybody else a lot of time on the back end. Okay, so here's a question that I get a lot, and even I didn't fully understand this when I first got started back in 2003. So you get your bond, you get your authority, you start moving loads, and something happens, and for whatever reason, a carrier files a claim on your surety bond. What happens from there, and what is that? Explain that to me, the step by step. Give it to me like I'm a 5th grader.
I can only attest for how we handle claims. So every provider is going to have a different strategy to it. Some will receive the claim, pay out right away, and then say, hey, you need to pay us back to keep your bond active. We take a different approach. When a claim is filed, we are always going to contact the broker first thing. We're going to get their position on the matter, give them a chance to respond to the claim, see what their situation is, see if we can't handle it between the broker and the carrier without us becoming financially involved in the situation, because no one wants extra steps in the process. It becomes a hassle. So we try to solve it between the broker and the carrier. There are quite a few different things that a claim can be filed for, but basically there's going to be an investigation that happens if the claim is valid, if the claim is not valid. If it is, the broker is going to, pay the carrier based on the contract that hopefully the carrier completed if the investigation is thorough. If the claim is denied, it's usually not much of a sweat. If those claims start to rack up, then there might be a conversation at that renewal. But there are a lot of illegitimate claims that are filed, whether it's, the truck driver got into an accident and the load was damaged, claim is filed. That's not something the bond covers. The carrier canceled the load or was late to the delivery site, and now there's an excess charge on there, and there's a discrepancy. That's not something that the bond typically covers. So there's a lot of claims that are filed that are not going to affect the bond at the end of the day. Don't stress about it. Usually not that big of a deal. But if something legitimate is filed against your bond, make sure to handle that quickly, because at the end of the day, your authority is based on you handling that in a timely manner.
Yeah, and just to kind of reel it back a little bit, remember the objective of the surety bond is to protect and guarantee payment to the carriers, okay, from brokers. And so if there's a legitimate claim, it's the surety bond companies, it's Jet's responsibility, it's Dakota's team's responsibility to make sure that that carrier is made whole. And so if they have to pay out a claim, then what's going to happen at that point, and correct me if I'm wrong, then you as the broker are going to have to repay the surety company, right, to make up for that delta that they paid. If there was a freight bill that for whatever reason didn't get paid, and they have to pay out, you're going to have to pay that back, right? So it's not like a homeowner's insurance where you file a claim for some water damage and then they write you a check for $11,000 minus your deductible, and then you get to keep the money and do whatever you want. But it's a little bit different, guys. This is a commercial business environment. It's different. And the objective, that's why it's kind of like an insurance policy, but it's really not. It's a surety bond. Okay. Did I state that correctly, Dakota? Is that correct?
No, you hit the nail right on the head right there. It's different when, if a claim is filed in insurance, they say, oh, your premium went up, or, this claim was valid, but we can still keep you on the policy itself. If a claim is filed against your bond and there is a payout that happens, there's a large chance that you're going to, that bond is going to be canceled. You're not going to be able to do business, and you're still going to have to repay the surety provider for what gets paid out. So it really is important to handle those claims appropriately.
Yeah, exactly. It's important because without that bond, you have no broker authority. As soon as that bond goes, if you lose your bond, and they're responsible to notify the FMCSA, and as soon as the FMCSA finds out, then they're going to make your broker authority inactive. And then now you don't have an active broker authority. Now you can always reestablish a bond and you can get it activated again, but it's important. That's the reason why we're here today. We want to make sure that these questions are all answered, because there's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of, nuance here when it comes to what is a freight broker bond? How does it work? And so I want to talk for a minute here. You've been in the industry for a few years. Jet is obviously one of the leaders in the industry. And, there are a lot of guys, a lot of providers I've seen in the last over 20 years that I've been in the industry. I've seen a lot of providers come and go. We even had a conversation about that, not long ago. My question to you is, what should somebody look for in a good surety bond provider? What are some characteristics? What are some services? What are some things that a good bond provider should provide that maybe some of the others might not?
It's a great question. Mainly a good indication of a solid surety provider that knows what they're doing and has a good understanding of the industry is their underwriting practices. There are quite a few surety providers that will open up the MC number and look at the years that it's been active, look at the personal credit of the owner, and then toss out a rate. And it could be as accurate as throwing darts against a wall, because there's so many other indicators that you look at to assess the risk of a business, especially in the freight industry. You've got, you know, uh, there are tools where to see how well carriers are paid. You've got, carrier 411, carrier okay, things to help you validate the uh, the risk of the business that has applied to your provider. So um, you're looking for things to be done, close to home. If claims are handled in house, that they're sitting right next to the underwriter that applies for the bond, so they're both going to be up to date on the risk of the industry and kind of ping off of each other of what to look out for. Um, you want someone who, you call the business, they're going to respond right away. They're going to pick up the phone. You don't want to get into this mess of uh, automated chats or automated anything, because that's where the people who are good at scheming or fraud in the industry are gonna they're gonna find their way to worm through. So that human interaction, that good understanding of the industry is a good place to start in looking for a solid surety provider who's going to be around for a long time.
And we talked about it already, but I think this makes sense to kind of add it to the list, which is somebody that has a claims process that's more broker friendly, right? Because you can have, if there are surety bond providers, I assure you, I know some of them out there, that if a carrier files a claim, there won't be an investigation. They're just going to pay the claim. And then they're going to let you know they paid the claim. And then you're going to have X amount of time to repay it, or they might just cancel your bond. Okay. So that claims process is important. And Dakota talked a little bit about how Jet Surety does that. And so I think that would be another part that you would want to understand and maybe ask those questions, whoever you decide to go with or whoever you're currently with, if you already have a freight broker surety bond. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. So I think we've answered some really good questions here. The biggest question and the last question we're going to answer, and then we're going to jump into Q&A. So hold tight, write down any questions you have. Hopefully you've jotted them down along the way. But let's talk about the really quick, simple step, the simple process that people can go through in order to get their freight broker bond, or to at least get more information about it. I'm going to put a URL up on the screen here, but you can talk about it if you to get started.
Yeah. It really is a simple process. It's just a matter of having your DOT and MC number from the FMCSA. It's a matter of having your personal information on hand, your first, last name, and social, which you should have at all times, and just having some good contact information, phone number, email. That's really all that you need to start the application process. There are some things that might be asked for along the way, like proof of ownership for the company. So, have your articles of organization or your articles of incorporation on hand, just to make sure that we're selling the bond to the right person. In some cases, have a personal financial statement prepared so that you can have things ready on hand to make that process a little bit more smooth, and have some quicker responses prepared. But in essence, just bring yourself and your business. It's really as simple as 2 minutes, a couple clicks, and should have some quick responses with some good prices.
So if they were to go to the URL on the screen, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/bond, and fill that out, it's going to send you and your team the form and the information, and that's going to start that process. From there, if they've provided the correct information, what's that process look like, and what's the typical timeline for something like this for them to be able to get a bond secured, assuming that the moons line up?
Yeah. So as long as we get good responses from the applicant, and they're on time with answering questions, pick up the phone when we call them, we can typically have a bond issued and filed to the FMCSA within a couple of hours. It's a pretty quick process. So
Wow.
if there's some other things that haven't lined up yet, like the LLC isn't formed, or they're shopping prior to applying to the FMCSA for that authority, obviously those timelines are going to be stretched out a little bit.
Of course.
Time. But if you've got everything prepared, we're going to have that bond issued and filed at FMCSA by the end of day. So once the bond is filed, that's usually the longest waiting period that you're going to have until you can actually start doing business, because the bond itself does not automatically activate the authority. The FMCSA has to process the submission, make sure everything lines up, and then activate it. So that usually happens around the 7 to 10 day mark, give or take a couple of days. They say up to 3 weeks, but in our experience, usually happens around that week mark.
Perfect. So listen, that draws you guys a picture. If you're curious about, maybe you're shopping bonds right now before you file your application, or maybe you've already filed your application with the FMCSA, and you guys want some information from a company you can trust and that I've vetted and that I'm fully endorsing here. I'm hanging it out here, guys, just so you know, if this is something I believe in, I wouldn't have them on here if I didn't. You can go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/bond. Fill that simple basic application out. Someone from either Dakota or probably someone from his team is going to reach out to you, and you guys can take those steps. And I really appreciate you being here, Dakota. It took a little bit of work to get here, but it seems like things have worked out. Is there any final comments or words you want to share with everybody before we jump into Q&A?
Yeah, no, I mean, just apply when you've got the time. I always suggest to people to shop around to as many places as possible. It's, not 99% of the time we're going to have the best rate, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be the case every time. It's always the best to do what's good for your business. Specifically, if we can't get that for you, then, hopefully someone else can, but I'm almost going to guarantee that we're going to be the best option for a lot of people.
Love it. Awesome. Really appreciate you being here, Dakota. Listen, hit up that link, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/bond, and good luck to getting your new authority, operated with, and hopefully you're working with JetSurety or somebody that you can trust. Thank you so much for being here, Dakota.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool, guys. So let's jump into Q&A. But before we do that, hit me up in the comments really quick. Whoever's still live here, we got quite a few people live. Whoever's live here, hit me up in the comments with 1 to 10. 1 meaning, Dennis, this was terrible and a waste of my time. 10 meaning this is the type of content I want to see. This is the type of information I want to get. And this was valuable. I'm looking for some feedback, because what I want to do, or what I'm considering doing, is having more industry experts like Dakota on that cover different areas, whether that be TMS or whether that be even, contingent cargo, or maybe some sort of other technology or service provider, and making them a bigger part of these lives. I think it went really well today. I think Dakota did a great job. I hope you guys agree. Give me some feedback. All right, cool. So this is the sort of stuff you guys want to see. I love it. And if it's not, let me know. I'm all ears, guys. I have thick skin. I'm a big boy. You can tell me whatever you want. If you think this was a waste of time, just tell me why. Tell me where we missed the mark. Okay. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. But I think so far, it looks like the feedback has been great. Awesome. We even got an endorsement from somebody who's already using JetSurety, which is April. April appears to be really happy with JetSurety. So perfect. Awesome. All right, listen. So let's jump into Q&A. You have us for a fairly short window. So here's what I'm going to recommend. If you have a question for me, okay, say, hey, Dennis, can you answer this question? And then type the question in the chat box. If you have a question for Dakota, address it to him. If it's for both, then you can say both. All right. But let us know, and we're going to try to get to as many questions as we can. Here's the thing, and you guys know this, unless you're brand new to this stream, there's always more questions than there is time. We will do our absolute best to try to get to your questions, but you got to front load these questions here. If you want your questions answered and it's important and it's relevant to you, then hit us up in the comments. We answered a lot of the most common questions, but maybe you have a follow-up to one of the questions that we already answered and you want us to dive a little bit deeper. Feel free. We'll be glad to do that. Okay. All right. So who's got questions? Hit us up in the comments and let us know. And if there's no questions, it'll be the first in history. Okay. Which I think there was one back here. Let's see. Okay, so another endorsement of Jet, and again, these are just coming in unsolicited. Scott Taylor apparently has been using Jet, and he recommends them highly. So just a little bit of extra, support here to let you guys know that if you reach out to Dakota and his team, that you'll be in good hands. Okay. He may or may not be able to help you. It may or may not be your choice, but you'll be in good hands however you decide to move forward. Okay. So let's see what we got for questions. Okay. Here's a couple questions. Cool. All right. Question. Hi, please advise if you know any companies providing SHity bonds to Canadian citizens. Oh, that's a great question. How is that handled? Dakota, talk to us.
We had a lot of these types of applications come in recently with Canadian businesses wanting to either start a new brokerage or they have one already set up and maybe their current provider is no longer offering that option. It is a little bit more difficult. I'm going to be honest with you up front, but as long as the company has good financials or if it's a new business and they have good personal financials, there's a shot of it getting through. I'm certainly not going to guarantee anything with Jet specifically. The new brokers that are non-U.S. citizens are going to be a little bit more difficult to get through. Maybe need to present a little bit more cash up front, and in some cases possibly require collateral. But it is an option. You just need to have a conversation with that surety provider over the phone to see if there's anything extra that you can provide to be able to support, them feeling good about writing your business.
Yeah, is the big issue, I mean, the fact that, when you write bonds, you write a lot of it based upon credit and US credit system, the way it's set up, it doesn't really cover Canadians, right? And so you might have to provide, that's where you're talking about, you might have to provide some additional financial documentation or proof of history, things of that nature. Is that what it kind of looks like typically?
Correct. Yeah. I just without that US social and the credit score established, it's a lot more difficult to be able to determine that financial risk.
Yeah, it's all about risk. And so here's the thing, guys, and this is what I want to share with you. If you're from Canada or you're from South America or you're from Europe, okay, or you're from anywhere outside of the United States, and for whatever reason, you're struggling to get the bond, maybe it's the financial or the credit, or maybe it's just the hassle, okay, of the whole getting your own broker authority, start out as a freight agent. I'm telling you right now, guys, it is the best gig in town. Let me explain to you why. You don't have to get a bond. You don't have to get an authority. You don't even have to set up the software because the brokers you're going to work under are already going to have that handled. You don't have to pay carriers. You don't have to really deal much with claims. You need very little money and you have very little risk, but you have a huge upside. You get paid 50 to 70% typically of the profit on any loads that you originate. Now, I have friends of mine, students of mine, clients of mine that are agents. They're freight agents. They don't own their own brokerage, that personally make over $1 million a year in commissions. Now, that's not every agent. That's not most agents. That's the top 1%. But I'm telling you, even when I had my brokerage before I sold it, the last stat I had, we had over 70 offices, over 70 agencies, right? 7 agents working for us. And the average agent that was working from home made over $107,000 in commission working from home. And they were typically a one-man operation or a one-woman operation, one-person operation, okay? So the income opportunity, the potential is huge, even if you can't get your SHity bond, right? Even if you can't get your broker authority. So particularly those individuals that are outside of the US where there's an added level of complexity to get that authority and bond, I highly recommend that you guys do some research about being a broker agent to start. And then that experience you can probably at some point or potentially at some point parlay into your own authority. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Hope that helped. I wanted to add a little bit of color and texture to that because I think it was important. All right, cool. So 2-part. What if you're new to the business with no experience and want to get your SHity bond? How would we go through the process? Teed it
Great.
up for you, Dakota. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, another good question. It's basically the exact same process as someone, with experience or with an active brokerage already. The only difference is going to be the pricing. Um, just looking from a surety provider and insurance provider's viewpoint here, um, the risk of someone with a new business with no industry experience who doesn't have that personal knowledge of what's going on is going to be a lot higher of a risk than someone with even if it was another new brokerage, someone who's been on the road truck driving for 5 years or does have that freight agent experience working under another broker. So the the opportunity to get your bond is still going to be there with no experience in a new business. You're just for that first year you might have to put up a little bit more because there is that higher risk associated.
Yeah, and here's the cool part, because Dakota and I have had this conversation. If you come through my community and you've been a part of my Freight Broker Bootcamp Startup Program, right? And for those of you that don't know what that is, that's the Freight Broker Freight Agent Startup Program. I've had over 10,000 students go through that program. You can check it out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com. If you go through that program and complete the program, we'll issue you a certificate of completion that you've completed the training. And then as a part of the process, of coming through our community, if you provide that to Dakota and his team at Jet, they're going to leverage that as a part of your experience because now you've had some training. Okay. You've actually went through a formal training program that they vetted and that is well established as one of the industry leaders for over 15 years now. Okay. So that's part of this relationship is if you go through that Freight Broker Bootcamp Startup Program, you can get that certificate completion. You can then use that as a part of your process to plead your case on, hey, can I get approved? What are my rates and all of that? Is that correct, Dakota?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a great thing to bring up because I would like to clarify the surety providers are not specifically looking for experience. They're looking for a proficient knowledge of the industry. So you may not have that personal experience, but you've taken Freight Broker Bootcamp or you've taken an in-person, freight broker class or whatever training course you've been through. We can absolutely use that in lieu of personal experience on the road or personal experience being a freight agent, because it shows that you've invested your time into starting that business and gaining the knowledge about the industry that's helpful for starting any company.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad we brought that up because I think it's important. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So what credit score or financial requirements do I need to qualify? I mean, we talked about that a little bit, but if you want to kind of just retouch on that a little bit, I mean, obviously I know you said that they can get underwritten in the 500s, but it's going to be, a much higher premium. And then once they hit that 600 threshold, it starts to get a little bit more palatable from a cost perspective. I mean, is that kind of what you're looking at, or is there something you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no credit minimums. There's no financial requirements. I believe that the only hard no that we have with Jet, or I can assume almost any other provider out there, is if you have an active personal bankruptcy. I think that's the only no that's going to happen if you apply and it's just a straight decline. Other than that, we're really willing to work with the majority of financial situations or credit situations. Just obviously the better you present yourself, the lower the rate's going to be. So there's no minimums, just it's going to depend on what rate you get.
Perfect. April, this question is for me. Dennis, can I get an updated shippers list? The one at FBC is too outdated. Okay, so we update that shipper database typically every 18 to 24 months. I'll take a look at when it's supposed to be updated. But again, online data, when it comes to businesses and companies, it's constant moving target, right? Companies are coming in and going out of business. They're changing addresses. They're changing what's going on. And so we update that as often as we can. It's a very expensive process to update that data. So we can't do it on a daily or weekly basis without passing that cost through to you and significantly increasing the cost of the program. But typically every 12 to 24 months. But I do have some other, if you go to my YouTube channel and you search for find shippers or shipper leads, I'm going to give you a source of free leads. Matter of fact, I'll do it right now. Let me just pull this up for you guys. Okay, cool. Here it is. I just happen to have it front and center. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/free leads. That's going to bring you to Apollo. Now, Apollo is an outside service provider. I don't own that business. Wish I did, but I don't. Apollo, and you can sign up for free with an email with no credit card. Now, if you go in there, you can search by geography and size and industry and all kinds of different, filters that you can filter down different companies and even people in those organizations, contacts, and you can do that for free. Now, there's a lot of data for free. And then if you choose and you want some enhanced data, like you wanted a cell phone of a shipping manager or you wanted his email, you want a little bit more granular data, then you can pay for that service, but you're not required to, and it costs you nothing, and you have no credit card that you have to put in order to test that, in order to start gathering those leads. They have millions of companies in that database, okay? So if you went and did a search for bottled beverage providers or steel providers or whatever niche you're in, you're going to find thousands of different companies in there that you can build a list from and then start using for your prospecting outreach. Okay. So I hope that helps. We will update, and we do update the database inside Freight Broker Bootcamp, but here's something to get you through. Actually has better data. I've actually considered, I'll be honest with you, getting rid of the shipper database inside of Freight Broker Bootcamp because it's a pain in the butt to keep updated, especially when we have a source like Apollo that you can go to for free with no credit card, and it has better data. Okay. I mean, I can't keep up with the quality of their data because they're a data company. I'm not a data company. I'm a training and, business. Okay. So I hope that makes sense, April. And that applies to anybody. freightbrokerbootcamp.com/free leads. Okay. You guys can go there. You can sign up for free with just an email and get access to all that information. Okay. So I hope that helps. I'm just reading here. Hold on. Okay. So here we go. Scott has a question. I've had several fraud claims back in January involving car haulers. Those claims were denied, but they were brokered on a load board notorious for fraudulent transactions. Is there anything bond companies can do to fight fraud? Interesting question. Fire away, Dakota. That's all. This is right for you, buddy. This is out of my wheelhouse.
I wish there were more things that we could do. Honestly, I wish that there was a little bit better of a handle on the fraud in the industry. Everyone knows that there's a lot of it going on right now. The best things that we can do as a surety provider, the best way we can impact the industry is not giving them a surety bond. So that's when that knowledge of the industry, when I was talking earlier about, what makes a good surety provider, what makes a bad surety provider, the knowledge of the industry, having that tough underwriting up front, being very thorough of who you're issuing a bond to is going to help keep those fraudulent people off of, off the FMCSA, and, prevent them from having legitimate access to those load boards to where they can, run their scheme and disappear. So yeah, it's a big key. There's, we can report the companies to the FMCSA for this and that. There's typically, not a lot of response there, or at least, they'll react, but by the time that happens, they're gone and into the wind. So it really is an upfront process. And the FMCSA has actually taken steps, in the last few months to kind of help negate that a little bit. They've added the ID verification process at the application, where you've got to do the facial. Finally, yeah. We've had this for 2 years now, at least with our own underwriting practices, and FMCSA's kind of got on a little bit, because it really does help to prevent the the stolen identities from getting through, and other schemes that are run. So
Yep.
it really is an upfront process. You got to be on top of it with your underwriting, because that's the best way to keep those fraudulent brokers out of the
Yeah,
industry.
and I'm going to add a little my own 2 cents to this, and I think I can't speak for the SHity Bond companies, and I don't think there's a whole lot that they can do other than, again, try to filter out the bad actors through the underwriting process. But the best way to prevent fraud is due diligence. You have to slow down the process of whoever you're doing business with. And I know you could potentially do everything perfect and still run into that situation. But if you slow down the process and you use some of the vetting tools that are out there, like Highway or Carrier OK, or some of the other tools that are built into Truck Stop and DAT to help vet, I think Freight Validate and some of these other tools that are designed to give you another layer of data to help you make better decisions on who you're doing business with, it's going to pay you back in spades. You will be able to filter out probably 95% of the bad actors by having a process that uses that additional data. But if you don't use that data, now I'm not saying that you're going to have, someone that's going to double broker your load or steal your load or have some sort of fraudulent transaction, but the possibility is definitely heightened. So if you can find a tool and a process that allows you to vet those carriers and add a different level of complexity, plus you can use that as a selling feature to your shippers, right? You can use that as a selling feature that this is what our process is. This is how we ensure your freight is safe. This is how we really go the extra mile. That's only going to help in that process. So I hope that helps a little bit, Scott, but it's a really good question and I appreciate you asking. Okay. Okay, question from Inder. I'm trying to be a broker. I've been dispatching, but I'm failing to find shippers and customers. Okay, so Inder, come back with a specific question. If your question is, how do I get shippers and brokers? Or how do I get shippers and customers? It's probably a little bit too generic because my answer is going to be sales. Okay, you need to learn how to sell. It's not like a coffee shop where you can put it up on the corner of Main Street and people are going to drive by and they're going to stop in and try your coffee. That's not how freight brokering works. You're going to have to go out there and press the flesh. Either that's through the phone or through email or through face-to-face or through LinkedIn. I do have a program. If you guys are interested, I have a program called the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. Now that program is where I take that piece of my brain, I transplant it into your head, and I teach you everything I know about freight broker sales strategies, tactics, tools. It's the same system that I used to do over $200 million of freight broker. Okay. So I do have a program like that. It's not free. It's not cheap. Okay. But if you guys if you want some information, you want to get on the wait list, it's currently sold out. You can't even enroll. Okay. So you can't even get access to it right now. But if you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/wait list, you can get on the wait list and you'll get notified the next time spots open up. Okay. I would say, spots will open up occasionally. It depends. Maybe every 3 to 6 weeks, we'll get some spots that'll open up depending upon where we are in the process, because I really limit the number of people that are involved in that program. So maybe that'll help you. But other than that, if that's not something you can afford or you have time for, go to my YouTube channel. I have, I think, over 100 free training videos specifically about freight broker sales. Okay. Free education. You can get access to all that. Okay. So I hope that helps. Good question. Thank you. Okay. Question. I'm currently working as a new freight agent in brokerage company. Do you think it's a good idea to open my own brokerage in the future once I gain experience and gain a book of business? That's an impossible question for me to answer. I know that if you are successful as an agent at building a book of business and you can generate profit that can sustain you as a business owner and you have the funds to grow your business, you will have an option at some point if you choose to get your freight broker authority. But just know, a freight broker's job and a freight agent's job, there's definitely some overlap, but they're different. There's definitely some similarities, but there's a lot of differences too. So freight brokers, you got to have your broker authority. You got to do all the billing. You got to collect all the bills. You got to pay all the carriers. You're carrying all the risk. Okay. Right? An agent, you're focused on just finding and servicing your customers. You don't do any of that back office. You have very little, if any, cost or risk. And so I've said to you before, I said it earlier in this live, the freight broker agent gig, the freight agent gig is the best gig in town. I'm telling you right now, especially for new people. I shared some of my clients and some of the people I know in the industry and friends, what they're doing as agents. It's not uncommon to make 100 to 300 or more thousand a year. Top agents are making over $1 million a year. And I'm not talking guys that have been in the industry for 20 years. I know two guys in particular that have been in the industry for less than 5 years. Less than 5 years. They did not come from the industry. And they're both making over $1 million a year in commissions as an agent. If they can do it, you can do it. I'm not guaranteeing it, but the possibility's there. Okay. So, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Dakota, but I think that's, you can do it and it will enhance your opportunity to get your SHity Bond if you do have that type of experience. But we can't answer that question for you. It's an impossible question. Only you can answer that question. Okay. Thank you very much, FBSA, Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. Joe says Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is everything you need. Good. That's my Sales Accelerator coaching program, right, for sales. So anybody else have any questions? We got a couple minutes left. We got through a lot of questions. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. If you learned anything, if you thought this was valuable, hit the like button. Do me a favor. Hit the like button no matter where you're at. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And then again, for those of you that are curious about getting some pricing, shopping around your current bond, or you've already in the application process for your Freight Broker Authority, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/bond. If you go there, you'll fill out a super quick form. That'll get over to Dakota and they're going to be on it. Okay. And then you guys can get a lot more information on that. And if there's no other questions, and I think we're good, I think you did a great job, Dakota. Any parting words, anything you want to share before we sign off for today?
No, just wanted to say, thank you for having me on and appreciate being able to share my knowledge about the industry a little bit, or at least my side of the industry, and hopefully clarify things that needed to be clarified, and look forward to seeing everyone come in through the applications.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I know it took a little bit of time to get this process going. I'm excited about the future of working with you guys and my students being able to count on you for good, solid information and learn and access to, to a bonding product that they can trust. So for those of you that are in that process, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/bond. Appreciate you guys being here. Have an awesome day, and we'll see you next Monday on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live.